Thank you everyone for coming to today's xTalk and welcome. Some of you already know me. My name is Jovi Nazarino. I am a learning science and education outreach specialist with the residential education team in open learning. So today's talk is all about collaboration and communication. So the talk is formally called Fostering Collaborative Success Strategies for Student Feedback and Team Projects. And it is my pleasure to introduce our two guest speakers today. We have Jane Abbott and Rik Eberhardt. Jane is a lecturer in comparative media studies and writing, and Rik is a program manager for the MIT Game Lab. And what's really cool is that they work in different contexts, yet they both have very thoughtfully thought about what it takes to foster student collaboration. So Jane is here. She'll talk about the curriculum developed called Coefficient that focuses on student collaboration and connection. And in Rik's case, there's always team-based projects happening in CMS 611, and that's balanced with timely and effective feedback. So we'll hear in more detail from both of them on that. Today's talk will basically be Jane will present first, and then Rik will present, and then we'll kind of just open up for question and answers with everyone here. So all that being said, Jane, I am happy to pass things back off to you. So when you're ready, you can share your screen.
So I start with a quote from our beloved new leader, Sally Kornbluth, who said to freshmen last year, "Empathy and respect are central values here," which I think many of us were happy to hear. And then a quote from a presentation on standing together against hate, the initiative begun by Sally, but really piloted, launched, and followed by Melissa Nobles, our dean, who said to foster constructive dialogue and help participants tackle difficult issues is the mandate of that program. And that's what we in RAP and elsewhere have been working on, getting into the sort of the curriculum, but also the mindset and the ethos of MIT. And I've been teaching this kind of thing for years. I'll give you a little bit of my background in a minute, but there was a quote that I ran across from Ian Waits a number of years ago. Someone asked him, in your career as an engineer, you've worked constantly with teams of people. What skills have helped you the most? And the quote was, three things have been essential: listening deeply to others to fully understand them, building mutuality, the sense that we're all in this together, and appreciating the opportunities created by working with a variety of people. And I thought that was such a beautiful quote, and I featured it in my classes for years. And when we we're ready to launch the Coefficient project, we thought, well, maybe we better check with Ian and see if it was okay with him to feature his quote kind of prominently. So I let him know that I think Andreas actually let him know that that's what we were doing. And his response was, I don't think I've ever in my life used the word mutuality, but other than that, it's fine. So we've adjusted it a little. But this is the kind of thing, these are the kinds of principles that we're focused at in this program, and helping our students arrive at these fundamentals that help the most working with teams of people. A little bit about my background. I've been at MIT for 20 years, and before that, I spent some years consulting in industry, and my expertise developed into working with teams, mostly teams of very smart, very accomplished people who were failing because they couldn't work together. And over those years, one of the things I learned is that there are a lot of tools and skills available, but the foundation of effective teams are some very simple principles. They're very simple, but they're very difficult. They take practice, they take focus, they take motivation to learn. And that's what I started to try to bring here to our MIT students, because our students are also smart, accomplished people, and they get put on project teams in classes, and they don't get support with those project teams. What you hear them say is, if you get on a good team, it's a great class, but if you don't, and then they stop and look dour. And so this instruction is what our students need, and more our students know that they need it. I do a class called Emotional Intelligence for Teams that's a CIHW. It's for first year writing support. And this year it was 60 students oversubscribed. I could only take 15. So it's the word is out that students are going to need to learn how to work with people as they go forward in their lives and in their careers. Here's an example. This is Kyle Edelberg from JPL. And I realize I, uh, I'll play you his.
So we hired from JPL. One of the things we look for is engineering talent, of course. What's your experience? What's your background? What do you bring to the table? The other thing that we weigh just as heavily is what's your ability to communicate. The first reason is we need to be able to understand what it is that your background is. What projects have you worked on? What are your hopes and dreams to understand if you're a good fit? And that requires being able to communicate with us what it is that you do, who you are as a person. Second thing is we want to make sure that you're capable of working in a team, that you have patience, that you can work through problems together, because things are going to be trying and difficult. And we want to be able to be a cohesive unit and work together because we're all in this together.
So students know that employers are more and more looking for people who can work with people, and especially with the advent of AI taking so many of the kinds of jobs that aren't that, it's become more and more important, and it's become more and more visible in the realm of job hunting and recruiters and so on, that people are looking for people with people skills.
When we hire,
Whoops, sorry about that. So one of the things I've done is look out in the literature in the world at Amazon, for example, which I don't buy from, but I search on, to see what are the books out there and what are people doing about teamwork. And if you look, you will see tons of books about teamwork, 6 simple ways teams can go from good to great. And they all have these great slogans. And there are over 40,000 of them with the word teamwork in the title. And what that says is there's a lot of interest in it, number one, but number two, nobody has the handle on it. Everybody has a little piece of the puzzle. And I tell my students that that collaboration is like tennis. If you read the book by Serena Williams about how to be a great tennis player and you memorized it and you got 100 on the test, how much better would your tennis be? Maybe a little bit around the edges. And it's the same thing with teamwork. You can learn this stuff, but you have to get out and practice it and take the risk of practicing and go through the discomfort of practicing, because understanding it is the booby prize, as a teacher of mine once said. And the gold really is the experience and the practice and the growth. So we in RAP started to develop last year a curriculum for collaboration concepts, dispositions, and skills. And we had a sort of a contest for what to call it. And our fearless leader, Andreas Karatsolis, who is Greek, came up with this possible title of it. That came from a Greek term for that which unites in action with something else to produce a given effect. And in Greek, that's what it is. I don't know how to pronounce it in Greek or in English, but it means both joint contribution and solution to a problem. And the word translated is coefficient. So we loved that. We thought that was a nice geeky mathy word that our students would like, and that's become the name of our curriculum. It was intended and designed, and we're working with it for STEM students in project-based classes. We want it to be adaptable for other classes, either in whole or in part. We're working to make it modular and flexible. And the key intention is to require a minimal amount of additional instructional or student time, because we're all busy enough and our students are all crammed enough. So we're trying to work it into classes in ways that don't take up much mental or temporal space for students, to make it easy to grasp and efficient to work through, and yet valuable and experientially relevant for them. So the current prototype that we're working with is aimed at course 6 CIMs, which hundreds and hundreds of students take. There are 5 content modules. It's up on Canvas. Each of the modules should be readable in about half an hour. We have a Google Doc notebook where students can keep reflections and exercises, and a library on Canvas that we're building that includes exercises, resources, tips, and tools. All of this is still under construction. We ran it last year for the first time. There were tons of glitches, lots of things we want to improve. So it'll be a work in progress probably for a couple of years, but that was the essential start of it. The modules are these. First of all, self-awareness, listening, and trust. Those are the foundation of effective teams. If you don't have awareness of your own state and your own tendencies and your own biases, and you can't reach out and listen to others. You can't build trust, and if you don't have trust and psychological safety, you're cautious, you withhold, you don't take risks, you're not creative. So those things are really the ground that good teams stand on. So that's our opening gambit. Then we look at thoughts, feelings, values, and habits, all of each individual's internal movement and contents and who we are on the inside and what that has to do with our working with each other. Then, and this is the section that Mary piloted so beautifully, curiosity and connection. What does it take to get curious about people? How do we connect? How do we ask questions? How do we learn more about what's going on before we blunder into trying to do something about it? And then the one that's so important for our students, compassion, self-compassion, and empathy, of course, emphasis on self-compassion. Navigating conflict. What do we do when we bang heads? And I'll put up some bits from the introduction. We've asked students, how many of you have worked on a team that was great? Most students raise their hand. They look excited. I could probably do the same with you. You've been on a great team. And then we ask, how many of you worked on a team that was awful? And again, they go, oh, yes, we have. It was horrible. And the worst part of a bad team can be that feeling of being helpless, stuck and helpless. So we want to leave students with options so that forevermore, when you're on a team, you have in the back of your mind something you can try to see if you can improve the team that you're on when you get stuck. So overall learning goals match the modules. I'm going to run through this quickly because I'm noticing my time is passing. But importantly, and I'm convinced that this is one of the key aspects of the class working, we are all in it together. And by we, I mean the people leading it. So I love teaching this stuff because I am a terrible collaborator. I am a get out of my way and let me do it myself kind of person. You can ask certain of my colleagues who have encountered that. And so every time I teach it, I think about something in my mound of collaborative skills that I'm not very good at. And I let my students know this is what I'm going to work on this term. And I work on something with them and I let them know how I'm doing and what I'm learning and what I'm discovering right along with them. So I'm in it with them. I'm not a bystander. I'm not an expert. And you cannot persuade me that that isn't a crucial part of the class is really to be a participant in it, because as far as I can tell, it is lifelong learning. So some of the strategies we work with, as I said, first of all, self-awareness underlies everything else. And it's what allows us to shift from reacting to what's coming at us, to taking that moment to consider our reaction and choose a response, which is an enormous undertaking and enormously powerful skill to develop. Listening to the noise in our own minds is a step in being able to set that noise aside in order to actually listen to someone else. Trust is built in small increments in two related ways, and this is part of it that is so simple and yet takes practice. One of them is to make yourself a little bit vulnerable and wait to see if that vulnerability is exploited. The other is the same transaction in a different form. It's to make a commitment and keep it, or communicate if you can't. And I say to students, what would be, for example, a way that you might make yourself a little vulnerable? And they scratch their heads for a minute and then they kind of light up and they go, oh, ask for help. And we say, yeah, asking for help is one of the ways in, because it communicates, I don't know everything, I'm learning, and it makes it safe for the rest of your team to ask for help and to also not know and to also be learning. So those are some of the key strategies. The two related to questions and compassion. Almost any interaction can benefit from asking questions. And compassion is what promotes connection, and we're made for connection. So keys are those three things: self-awareness, curiosity, compassion, and then seeking common ground. What do we share? What do we have in common? Here are some of the key academic and intellectual contributors to the material that we've been working with. I'm going to let you skim those and continue, but it's excellent scholars from around the country who look at the underpinnings of people working well together. And then we also include material designed by a group called the Constructive Dialogue Institute, which you can look up at constructivedialogueinstitute.org. They've developed a class that is beautiful. I aspire to getting our modules to work as effectively as theirs do. Because constructive dialogue is essential for collaboration, their beautifully designed online class was built to show both high school and college students how to converse productively about our politics. So it's aimed at politics. So we don't necessarily want to include the whole thing because we're not teaching students politics, and that's dicey to raise in our classes. But the principles of it are really beautiful and effective, and students take to it with great enthusiasm once they get the hang of it. So as time permits, we adapt elements of that course into our coefficient classes. And their 5 key principles are: let go of winning, which makes our students kind of gasp in horror, but they eventually get the point that letting go of winning and allowing for cooperation is often a stronger place to stand. And then ask questions out of curiosity to understand, share your story, and invite others to do the same. They look at the power of storytelling as a means of communication. Make yourself and others feel heard, and find what's shared. So they're similar principles. They're beautifully, beautifully packaged. So if you're interested in working some of this stuff in your classes or elsewhere, I strongly recommend you to take a look at their class as well. I'm going to go through some feedback that we got from students. We did not have great success collecting data this past year. We had glitches getting the surveys out. We had glitches getting the surveys back. So we didn't get much that was of use. But over the years, I've collected kinds of things that students say they learn. And every student will learn something different because they're all in a different place and having different needs. But I think what you can hear in these selected bits of feedback are these gems of insight and these sort of seeds of really potential growth for these students. They are small, but if you listen carefully to them, they're really quite dramatic. This was a wonderful student I have who one day came bounding up to me and said, with this exuberance that I can't begin to convey, she said, people always said I'm a terrible listener. I always thought they meant I should just shut up more. But I just realized they meant I should, listen and find out what other people really mean. It was a huge moment for that student. Someone else, I used to love to do everything myself and not have to deal with people. My kind of person. Now I see myself working on a team. Even though it's not the most fun thing, it's manageable. Many students here, I am generally quiet and reticent. When I ask more questions, I have a better understanding of where my teammates are, and they have a better understanding of where I am. Sometimes before this class, I'd be doing one thing, but worrying about something else. Now I'm paying more attention to the things in front of me, so I'm less stressed and doing better work. One of our partnerships around the Institute that this reminds me of is our partnership with S Cubed and the incredible array of services that they offer to students with time management and stress management and that sort of thing. So we all address that. I learned that everyone goes at a different pace. I don't have to compare myself with others. I'm working on another group project with a friend. While we have lots of philosophical differences, I'm trying to remember that there are some ideas he has that could definitely be helpful to my life. So I'm trying to be less biased and listen to his point of view. We know this student, probably all of us, people would just trust me in high school. At MIT, everyone's pretty adamant that they're right and they don't blindly trust others. It was initially quite frustrating that people wouldn't just bend to my suggestions. I hear that one a lot from students. And this last one is really my favorite. It's so dear, and it's so you can hear the reverberations of it for the student. I don't usually talk a lot, if at all. I talked more. It was good. So those are the kinds of things that students take from it. And I think you can hear both for the individual students and for their capacity to work together better. You can hear the seeds of some really important work going on there. And again, simple, but difficult. So I'd be happy to take questions. We'll take questions after Rich talks, but Andreas and I and Michael Mounty is still experimenting with this stuff. We'd be happy to provide more information or give you more resources or let you into the Canvas site or anything you'd like.
Thanks for that great talk, Jane. Really learned a lot from that, and I definitely am going to talk to you afterwards. Uh, there's a lot of great overlap between that and mine. So I'll be talking about a specific course, CMS 611. It's cross-listed with in Course 6 on Computer Science 64570, creating video games, and talking about student feedback on our team projects. Class is taught by the MIT Game Lab. We're a research lab located within humanities and social sciences, specifically in comparative media studies and writing. And our focus is we're researching and designing games, toys, and just playful experiences. So this is a class to bring our research into the classroom as for students who are interested in game development. Myself, I have a background largely in game design, making games for specific contexts, and I've been at MIT since 2007. This is going to be a little bit of a fire hose just to get through a bit about what the class does. I'm actually just using the slides from our introduction day. Creating, and this is in particular right here, this is how we're reflected on the syllabus. So students who take the class, their expectations when they come to the class is they want to make video games. And ultimately, the class is actually a project management class. I just wouldn't get enough students if I marketed it as such. So it's marketed as a video game development class. But some keywords here, creative design, production methods, design iteration, regular testing. Those are our values. Those are the things that carry throughout the course. I tell students on the first day, if you just learn one thing from me this semester, I want you to at least learn this, that until your ideas are tested, it doesn't matter how great they are because you just don't know. And what testing means and what that ultimately means, there's a lot of different ways to unpack that. If they learn a little bit more, so if they look on the other side of the postcard and what else they might learn, it's largely about how to work well together, how to work on a team without hurting each other, particularly on a creative process, on a creative product that doesn't have a right answer. There's no one right way to make creative projects. When you're making a creative project, you don't know what the thing you were trying to make is until you're deep into it. So there's lots of issues around vision, around ownership, around coordination, around how much of yourself are you putting into this, commitment. All these things come out into the class. But a lot of the students are computer science students. They're taking it as a Course 6 with a little bit of maybe a HASA, an arts elective. So we want them to think not just as an engineering problem. It's not just a problem to solve through being efficient, but rather it's a problem to solve through communication, through open communication and trust with each other. We also talk about Agile as a means of creating things, and largely not as it's the best way to do it, but rather here's an example of a group of people that came together and said, we want to make good software, and we're going to do that by being good to each other. And so we bring in more examples like that. And then, of course, we always bring in Ted Theodore Logan and Bill S. Preston Esquire, which at this point, they don't know who these people are. But we do try to make sure that we are all excellent with each other in the course. I'm going to go over a little bit more about the grading breakdown because I think it's important, particularly when it comes to feedback, because that's really what they care about. At least that's what they say they care about when they're asking for feedback is why did you give me this grade? Where am I in this class? How does this relate to everything else? Because they're doing so many other things at MIT, and this ultimately is an elective course. They've elected to go into it. And it might be fulfilling some kind of requirement, but they could have filled this requirement through any other course. So really, grades are still pretty important to them. So we tell them, your grading breakdown is basically, it's derived from teams and working with others, but there is a significant part that's purely on your own. So helping them understand basically you can be on a bad team, you can have a bad experience, you can improve that experience, but it's not the entirety of your grade. There's a lot that you can do to mitigate that. So helping them kind of mitigate what to prioritize, what to talk about, what to think about as they move forward. The class is pretty strenuous. It's 2 3-hour workshops every week, and attendance is required. And the part of the reason for this, the secret reason, is I don't want them to crunch on their games. I want them to spend the time on their games. So if they're in the class working on their games, then they've already done half of the work. They've done 6 of their 12 credit hours of work. But we do make sure they understand there's 6 hours of work done on their own time outside of class. And that should be in coordination with their teams. But a big component, a big issue that I know a lot of students have is, how do I meet with other people? Well, it means you're spending your weekend time and you're spending your evening time and you're not sleeping and you're not doing other things. So I'd much rather them do it and actually have said, well, no, I've committed to the class, I've committed to these hours, I'm in the room, let's work together. The class is broken into 3 projects, so 2 short projects, prototyping projects that build onto each other. Sometimes the teams change in the middle. They do increase in size in the middle, but they spend 2 weeks on a project and then 3 weeks on a project, and then their final project is a 6-week project. I've been teaching this class since 2012, and I still, every time I teach it, the semester feels shorter and shorter. 12 weeks is not a lot of time to work on a team and to work on a team. So they're getting a little bit of a taste of forming teams and working on teams, but I don't think they're getting, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around, can they actually make major improvements to their team? Because you need more than 6 weeks to work with other people to really improve yourself. So really, I think what we're trying to do is give them enough space to kind of identify the problems, and maybe they solve them, maybe they don't, but maybe they have tools as they move forward. And just putting together, like, these are the kinds of things that you're doing over the course of those 6 weeks. Our grading rubric for each of those projects is largely focused on an iterative design process. I don't think they understand this slide, and I don't think they really get the breakdown of this. And that's actually going to come out at the end of this presentation, is some of the things I'm trying to figure out on how to improve grading feedback with that. But basically, the one important thing, the one highlight I put on this is, when I talk about this in class, is your game is only 1/4 of the project grade. The rest of it is all this other stuff that's related to process and things that you're doing. We tell them, why you're going to be in these large teams. You start in a 2 to 3 person team and you end up in a 6-person team. Because 2 and 3 person teams are pretty easy. You can easily talk to each other. You're probably friends. You're probably housemates or flatmates. And you're all kind of doing the same thing. You're truly collaborating with each other. Everyone's a designer or everyone's a programmer. So in project 3, I could just add another person, make you be a 4-person team. And you might have a little bit of role differentiation, but it's pretty easy. So instead, no, we're going to go 5. With 5 people, there's a lot more lines of communication going around, and maybe you need a lead designer. And I've seen 5-person teams try to outsource, like try to add someone from outside of class to add assets. We talk about the problems there, but ultimately, what the version of the class we're running now is project 3 or 6-person teams. You cannot work just by talking to each other and just by saying, this is what I did, this is what you're doing, and not write anything down. You have to have some kind of project management system in place. It doesn't have to be a heavy lift, and you do need to think about, are you running sub teams? Are those sub teams feature teams or whatever? You have to actually think about your team composition, what the roles are, what the skills are, and what everyone is doing. So ultimately, we're going to use, in the class, we'll use tools and methods to manage these problems. And for me, it's spreadsheets, just everything is spreadsheets everywhere. But we also try to bring in the bottom code review and pair program, we try to bring in things they might have done outside of class, either through, we talk about their internship experiences for folks that have them, extracurricular activities, and then other classes they might have taken. Cool. So rest of this is largely talking about feedback. How do we give feedback to them? How do they respond to that feedback? What are the tools? And largely focused on the tools for feedback. So here's the constraints. It's a 36 to 50-person class. It's a big class. In project 1 is about 18 to 25 teams, which we turn into like 6 to 9 teams in project 3. This past year, we used to have 4 instructors, which meant we could balance the load of lecture and class discussion. And one instructor is responsible for all grading and giving all written feedback. Now we're down to 2, and that's me giving all the grading, and I'm actually 2 weeks behind in grading. So I'll talk about that as well in the problem. There's lots of content. We can't guarantee prior design or engineering experience. Again, it's a HACE elective. We do have prereqs. They have to have at least taken a basic computer science course. The numbers have changed on us, but 6001 or equivalent, 6001 or equivalent, or have taken a game design class. CMS 301 is our game design class. But most of the students have not taken any design classes. They've just taken the computer science, and about half of the students, so of our 36 students this year, all but maybe 3 are course 6 majors. Many of them are concentrating, and most of them actually are probably concentrating in CMSW. So taking 4 classes, basically finding everything that says games on it and taking it. And then so a few of those might have some design experience. Our seniors tend to have taken whatever the variation course 6 is offering of software engineering. So they've gotten some of the technical background on working in projects together. And we can build off of that. I run surveys in the beginning of class to figure out what their backgrounds are. We do the thing we talk about, what kind of projects have you worked on? How have those gone? Things like that. But trying to identify, what are the gaps? And then we have a lot of content to fill all those gaps, because they're coming, like, we want to meet their expectations. They're coming thinking they're going to learn game design, and we want to make sure they do learn some game design. And then lastly, of course, creative projects. There's no right answers. All I could tell them is how I feel about the game that they made, but who cares, because I'm just one person. There's so many others. So really what we focus on are improving our results through process. And that's the biggest thing I'm trying to do, is orienting their mindset towards that rather than worrying about the results. Like, you do want to care about the results, but the thing you're changing is the process in order to improve the results. And that's the biggest thing. So how do we actually give that feedback? We want to do multiple points of reflection without adding a significant burden. We made these changes 2 years ago, and we'll be doing another revision. We revise the class every year. This past year was just what do we do with only 2 instructors? Next year now is what have we seen and what we'll do. But they do a weekly developer diary, a paragraph of good text, focused on their individual work, and I'll talk about the prompt. We do twice weekly discussion posts. So before they come to class each day, there's been a video or a piece of writing or something short that they read on or watch on Canvas, and they'll do a discussion post to it. And then we will use those discussion posts to actually have our in-class lecture or discussion. Last year, we added a weekly team update. So another kind of like a diary for the team, but pretty small. We have in-class playtesting and peer feedback sessions, and then we have group presentations. And those last 2 are kind of fluctuate each year depending on the number of students. So this is how we describe it in the first day. Your online participation in Canvas is important, and we kind of guide you into it. So here's the first couple, the weekly developer diary. Reflecting on the work you've done with your team. What issues are you facing? What are you learning? And what would you have done differently? And if you can't answer the last one, then you're getting only half credit for it. So a lot of, and I'll talk about this when I'm talking about grading. A lot of my values of grading are purely effort. I truly don't want to evaluate them because I don't care. I want to see them grow as teams, and I want them to, the experience is what I'm really looking for. So a lot of the grading that I'm doing, and the feedback we're seeing that way, is just, have you gone to a good level of detail of what we've asked of you? Are you bringing up things that are interesting? If you make me, and I even tell them this, like, I want to be interested. So if you come up with something that I want to talk to you about afterwards, then you're doing a great job. If you're giving me boring writing, then I don't know how it was helpful for you, because it wasn't helpful for me, and it's kind of just putting it in that regard. The actual developer diary itself just looks like this. And imagine just every week has its own box further down. And so they're building off of this. So it's a Google Doc that we give them, where I don't want it as a Google Doc, I want it as a PDF. They submit it they submit it each week to Canvas, and they've added another paragraph to it. So both I can see what they've written prior when I'm reviewing it, but also hopefully they can look at what they wrote prior. And I actually do see that. Since we switched to this a couple of years ago, we do see them refer back to prior weeks and bring that up. And this is actually a pretty easy document for them to create, and a pretty easy thing for them to submit in Canvas. I did a very complex thing a number of years ago, and the Canvas Innovation Fund got me a student to make a much more streamlined version. So I had this a couple of years ago, and I'm like, this is great. I want more things like this. So we created the team update. Team update is, instead of being able to see the prior. It's more about the current, where you are right now. So every team update has this requirement, answer three very quick questions and show us what your game looks like. And a lot of this is because when we were four instructors and all of us were in class at the same time, we just walked around and met with each team. As our instructor time has been reduced, time outside of classes is getting more of our time. We needed to replace it with something that gave us more insight into what they were doing and gave us regular points of contact with each team to give them, here's what you're doing. I want you to reflect on it, and I want to be able to tell you something else about it, about what you're working on. And the thing I'm liking about this so far is we've actually, in the past, we've talked about, red flags in development. So when you're in pre-production, when you're in production, when you're in concepting, et cetera, there's these known things that you should look out for. Things, what are people contributing to the team? Has anybody been sick? Have you even tested your game with other people? So whatever those red flags are, we include it in the team update. And so they're responding to those red flags as part of this, which is something we didn't have when we were meeting with them individually, because it just wasn't as structured. I think the one-on-one contact was great because it was much more free-flowing and much more it was more of a conversation, but it was really easy to miss important things. So having this kind of structure made sure that we got everyone thinking about the same thing. We also, to make sure that this wasn't a huge burden, we wanted it to be a very light lift on them. We opened it to many different ways of submitting, how they can submit it. Like some have done just a video, just TikTok style, just them talking to the camera. Some have done just text for the questions and a video. And in fact, what a lot of them have done is they've distributed the work of the update to everyone on the team, which is great. It's actually what I wanted them to do, and I didn't tell them to do that. In the past, these kinds of things would be, well, one person, the project manager, does all the administrative lift that the instructors are asking for, and everyone else gets to do the fun work. And what I've actually been seeing in the past couple of years is this just gets distributed. So everyone's contributed to a bit of it, meaning everyone's read it at least. Um, there's actually some cross communication going on, and it's not just one person's perspective. Great. So this last bit is, here are my current issues with Canvas and things I'm looking to solve. I am finding I need to teach how to use Canvas, and this is a time sink and it's expectation setting. Not everyone uses Canvas the same way. Every course they use it, every class uses it in a different way, and I'll show you that. I am, as I talked about, trying to figure out how are grades calculated and displayed. I think of competing values, not values of grade, but value propositions. Like I value them differently than they value them, and I'm trying to connect that. Also, more instructor time is spent in Canvas than student time is spent in Canvas. That's not a problem. That's just something to consider. Um, and I think it was 2 years ago, I really felt this. I was like, well, I'm using Canvas all the time. They must be using it too. And no, they're not. Actually, here's how I organize, and here as we organize our class. Every class session has a row, who's involved on it, what the lectures we're giving, what are the reading and assignment. So this is kind of the inside version of our brains. This is how we think of the class. This is how it's presented to the students as modules. So each week has a module. Modules have days. Days have what are we reading that day? What did we play that day, et cetera. And then through the Canvas Innovation Fund, when I got a TA to work on this, he created these week summaries that would then automatically email the students like, hey, look at this week summary the week before. All that said, this is how students look at Canvas. They go to the assignments and they show by date is the default. This is all they see. This is the first thing they see when they go to their Canvas. I've had lots of miscommunications about what's required, what's expected. And I'm like, all right, well, show me where you like what's the problem? Show me where you're finding this. Like, where'd you get that information? They look and it's like it's this. They're not seeing it the way I see it. This is my grading breakdown. So I'm really looking at these fine points. Like every assignment has a point value. Points increase over time. and they have percentages, and I try to show this to them through, actually, if they look at their assignments by type, they would get a little bit of a clue about this, but they don't even do that. So I need to actually spend some time and effort to get this through. Last slide. What am I doing for next year? I'm looking to improve our in-class discussions with 2 instructors and 36 students. It's really difficult. So I'll be learning from other folks on how folks do that. I'm trying to increase peer feedback. We have a really great energy each time we do playtest sessions. They talk to each other across teams, they learn from each other, and I even see that in their reflections. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we do that outside of not just playtesting? So our weekly team updates might actually become little presentations they give each other rather than the whole class, because it takes a lot of time to run through. We spend a day just presenting projects in class. And then the grading communication improvement. How can I improve how they see it in Canvas, but also just I'm thinking about what's my mind state when I talk about it. Can I make sure that when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about it in the way that they want to think about it? I want them to feel like they're earning points for effort and progress rather than losing points for misunderstanding the assignment, which I'm getting a lot this year, more than I have in previous years. I never got, why did I lose points? I used to just get, I didn't understand this. Now I'm just getting, no, I lost points. I want them to feel like they earned the points that they got. And then I need to figure out a better semester review. In a perfect world, we would do one-on-ones with everyone, but we don't have the time or space for that. And there's my contact information if anybody wants to see me. So thanks.
As you were presenting, I was thinking of Jane, and when you first started presenting, you mentioned that like tennis analogy, and this idea of like not only just learning what it means to be self-aware, listen, or trust, right? But like you have to take that risk of putting some things into practice. So it's really cool to see, Rik, and the types of activities and things you're asking students to engage in ways that are, asking them and somewhat forcing them to do it in terms of their grade. And I say that in a good sense, because I think part of it is like rewarding the process and their progress over time, right? And not only the product, what they're creating. So really, really cool to kind of hear from both of you in the same space. All that being said, if this is kind of open discussion, so if anyone has a question that came to mind while they were presenting, now is your chance.
Rik will talk.
It's great. Yeah, definitely. Like I'm looking towards coefficient for how you improve self-reflection. I'm also looking towards the compassionate systems framework from the compassionate systems lab, Peter Senge and Eric Klopfer's lab.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, trying to figure out how that content fits in a classroom environment.
Yeah.
Because I do want that conversation. I want feedback should be a conversation, not just an info dump. And so we've got more feedback now, but it is a little bit of just like, here you go. Here's your writing. Here's a response.
I was going to ask a quick question for both of you, which is, I think one of the pieces is the feedback in the next cycle of action, right? So in Jane's case, I think it's the students receiving feedback and then thinking about the questions that they may ask themselves or the opportunities they might want to engage in the group. For Rik, it might be, how do I apply this to the next project or the next challenge that my students face? So I guess just like my open question is, is that a focusing on feedback that gets at that next piece, if it's coming, is that one option? And if it's not, what type of reflection might they need to do to sort of actually take that, hold on to it, and carry it forward in some other way rather than it just being about a grade, for example?
That's a great question. Take some thought. Go ahead, Rik. I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think I think when they're all getting effort points, like when they're just getting I've done the thing and I reflected, the grade doesn't matter. They're really focused on the feedback. It's when there's a miscommunication of the expectation is where that issue is. I think they're really good, and they're because of everything else they're doing in other classes, they're already focused on the how do I improve myself? How do I improve my skill? How do I improve that next thing? I think the next level above that is, well, thinking outside of beyond the class, beyond this team, getting over and getting them in that like through like that metacognitive space, like thinking about their learning. Like really, I want them like a lot the dev diary as it's written and as we talk about it, it's you know you did some things this past week. What did you retain? Why did you retain it? What are you taking? What like find? And I'm asking them to tell me a story, like just a quick story, or instead of telling me everything, find one thing that was interesting, and then how does that relate to the work that you're doing and the work that you might do next, to get them out of the space of just giving me a description of what they did this past week. Like here's just the tasks I did.
Yeah, a lot of what I have students do, and I think it's a difference in subject matter, but I have them look at what we do in class or what they do in the readings or the videos that they look at and take it out in their lives and find an opportunity to explore this in your life with your roommates, with your family, with your whoever work team, and then even to project it and say, when you're out in the world of work, where might this come in handy? Where might you see a place for this? And have them that sort of metacognitive map it onto a lot of different circumstances other than you're in a class trying to get a grade, which is really irrelevant. I mean, not irrelevant, but the least of our concerns, really. So, but it's a great question. It's how do you have feedback work, like really produce something, is a constant question.
Jane, I wonder if you can say a little more about what the structures of coefficient are, like in terms of what kinds of things are student asked to do. So you mentioned just now, like folks might take a video or some reading or something, and they're asked to think about how they can apply that in some real life situation. But I'm sure you have other things like that you are doing with the curriculum. So I wonder if you can just share a little more examples with us.
Well, yeah, what we try and do is have the principles that we're teaching worked into the stuff that they're already doing. So, for example, the first trust building exercise, that one way of building trust is to make yourself a little bit vulnerable. So we have them introduce themselves, which they're going to do anyway. And so it's not adding to their load or their time. But in their introductions, one of the things they are asked to respond to is, what are you not good at? What are you worried about in this class? What are your concerns about this class? So from the get-go, they get out on the table some vulnerability with each other. And they will say afterwards, they kind of miss it when it's happening because they don't have a lot of context for understanding that that's what they're doing. But when we ask them afterwards, they remember that as part of what they went through, that was a little bit scary and it was a little bit exciting to hear that everybody else had things that they were worried about and things that they weren't so good at. So that's what we try and do, is work the exercises into what they're already doing. When they're in team meetings and we're doing the curiosity part, we have them track the number of questions that they ask and consider, where else might you have asked questions? Where would you like to go back and ask more questions? Where did you not explore as thoroughly as you might have? So it's work that they need to do anyway, that they're going to do anyway, that's part of their process. And we just kind of try and weave it in like that, because as separate information, it's not that useful. It's useful, it's like a hammer and nails, sitting on the shelf. They're not useful. It's when you're doing your work with them that you start to understand what they actually are for.
Just wanted to take a quick second to jump in. I wanted to thank both Jane and Rik for being sort of perfect examples of what it means to engage in this work iteratively. Like, you're talking about the work that you all have been doing over cycles of terms and the impact of feedback from past students and past courses and experiences and redesigning, and then obviously new constraints in the case of Rik in terms of like losing the number of instructors, and Jane in terms of the different contexts in which you're moving this work into. And so I just wanted to give a quick shout out to sort of like the incredible work that you continue to do. You both, I think, are great examples of it's not just one and done. It's thinking about this and thinking about how it works in the next cycle and the next course and the next set of students, and continuing to support the community forward. I don't think we touch on that enough oftentimes. Like we talk about like, oh, we did this thing and it was great and here it is, right? Instead of talking about the real pieces of this. And to both of you, our office is thrilled to continue to work with both of you, and anything we can do to support you all as you tackle some of these challenges. Rick, especially, I'm looking at you thinking of like how to get the students on board and give them that sort of early training and way of thinking about the Canvas site. I'd love to talk more about that. But just a shout out for the effort, because it is impressive and it should be called out and celebrated. So congrats to both of you.
Thank you for that, Aaron. I want to actually jump on that, because one of the visions that I have, and I'm going to hand this to you, Rick. I bet it's in there somewhere for you too, is that I don't know if you guys remember, but 10 years ago, MIT was not known for student well-being. And 10 years ago, we had a really tragic year. And since then, a group of people in the administration, I think kicked off by David Randall and others in S Cubed and so on, made it their mission to make well-being a part of the fabric of life at MIT and a part of the culture and a part of the air we breathe. And now you see the signs all over the place, and there are umpty-ump different kinds of student resources and a well-being center with fidgets and all kinds of, cookies and all kinds of stuff. And I have the same vision for collaboration and becoming an institute that's known for how well we work with each other. And it's so exciting to see our high-level administration start to voice that and name that and make that a part of our mission, to be a model for that in the world.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you again so much, Jane and Rick, for your great presentations. And Jane, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add one more thing? Because this
Go
this
ahead.
came to me so clearly listening to you, Rick, is that, and I do a little bit on this, but we work on relationship and we work on goals and tasks. Our students are brilliant at that. And then we work on relationship and getting along. But process is something that gets focused on so little. And process is where the bang ups happen. And raising that to awareness, I think, is super important. The end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's part of the course. And my work is just to value that process and to see it, or recognize it, and not let it be hidden, because it's actually already happening a lot
Yeah.
of the time. Somebody's doing that work, but no one knows who did it or why they did it. And so just making sure, like, even though the students that go through my course, most of them won't go into the game development, they're going to go into software engineering somewhere. Many of them have come back afterwards and said, yeah, I saw this at work, we did this thing, or I was able to bring, this was the biggest code for a lot of them. It's like, this is the biggest like number of lines of code that they've worked on, or they might have worked on bigger projects and bigger teams, but not so collaboratively with each other. So having that experience, I think, is really important. I love to see more courses at MIT really like bring that up.
Yeah.
Yes, really wonderful. And I feel so bad to bring this to an end now, because I just love hearing from both of you, but I do see we're at time. Thank you everyone for coming out to today's xTalk, and hopefully we'll see you all at another one. Bye, everyone.